Alright, so we are officially now in the endgame. We are entering round 5 and we have Sarlacc Nor in the lead with 6 points and the rest of the players with 5 and 4 points. And here in the strategy phase, Argent picks technology, and that's because he wants to go for War Sons in this game round. Hakan picks trade, and Arborec picks Imperial because I want to score spending 8 resources during the game round, and then hopefully I can also have more planets than each of 2 of my neighbors at the end of the game round. And lastly, Sarlacc Nor is picking Warfare. And we roll for the NPC strategy cards. The first one coming up is Politics, and let's see what the next one is. That is Construction. First up we have Hakan, and he decides to play an action card. It's Refit Troops. So that is an action, and then he can replace 1 or 2 of his infantry with mechs. So he places 1 mech on the planet adjacent to his home system, and I think that was the only one he had left in his reinforcements. And now it's Sarlacc Nor. He activates his forward dock and produces 2 dreadnoughts, 2 cruisers and 2 infantry. And that forward dock has really made sense for Sarlacc Nor. He has produced so many units out there. I almost think that he has produced more units out there than he has in his home system. We are moving on to Argent. He picked the technology card and he plays it as his first action. The reason for this is that he wants to go for War Sons. There are some control objectives, and what better unit do we have than having War Sons to achieve those? And he also exhausts or pays 6 resources to research another technology, which is the Neural Motivator. It is fairly late in the game for that, to be honest. But he has a secret objective where we need to discard 5 action cards. So of course Neural Motivator will help Argent achieve that secret objective. And the last thing Argent does is to flip Primor, so he can place 2 infantry, and he's placing them at his forward dock. Now it's Arborec's turn, and he replaces a cruiser, and he replaces a destroyer with a cruiser in the system adjacent to Sarlacc Nor. Now he gives Hakan his 3 commodities in exchange for getting some trade goods back when it gets to be Hakan. And Arborec also flips Malice so that he gets 2 trade goods. We are now at the end of the turn and rolling for the NPC card, and it is Politics being played. Ultimately Sarlacc Nor gets to be speaker, so he picks strategy card as the first one in the next game round, which is always good in the late game, so that you can get a strategy card with a low initiative number and score first during the status phase. It is now Hakan's turn, and as agreed with Arborec, he gets 3 trade goods back. I don't remember the details of that trade, but what Hakan does is that he plays the trade strategy card, the 3 trade goods, and replenished all of his commodities. When it gets to be Sarlacc Nor, he plays the Warfare strategy card and lifts the token from his forward dock. Argent is following the secondary, and he produces a War Sun and a destroyer in his home system. So it will be exciting to see where he's going to use that War Sun. And now when it's Argent's turn, he plays an action card, and that is the Frontline Deployment action card. And then you get to place 3 infantry on a planet you control. Arborec plays the Imperial strategy card as the first one. Now we have the 8 resources, so that's very simple to spend that. Score the point. And since we don't control Megator Rex, Arborec will also get a new secret. So now Arborec is in the lead along with Sarlacc Nor. Let's see what the secret is. And that is to have 4 technologies of the same color. Since I have 2 blue technologies, then that would be the logical one to try and research. We are now in turn 3, and Hakan activates the system adjacent to his home system, and that allows him to explore one of the planets he controlled there because he got scanning drone network. So he found some abandoned warehouses that will give him a few commodities, and then he flies in with a couple of units, and he picks up also ground force from his home planet. Next up we have Sarlacc Nor, and he activates out on Megator, and then he flies in with a dreadnought, a cruiser. So I guess he wants to protect Megator Rex probably because he wants the Imperial card. So now that when it's Argent's turn, he's playing a Plague on Megator Rex, and with that you get to roll a dice for each ground force, for each infantry on that planet. And as I remember, it's if you roll, is it more than 6? I don't remember. He decides to roll for himself 3 dice, and I think if you need to roll 6 or more, then 1 infantry dies for each 6 that is rolled. So 1 infantry died on Megator Rex. Moving on to Arborec's turn, he plays an enigmatic device, and with that I can spend 6 resources to research 1 technology, and that is very convenient to have now that I got the secret with having 4 technologies in the same corner. So now I can research 1 blue technology, and I pick Sling Relay. That is overall a really good technology. I could also went for Gravity Drive, but since I got Dreadnought 2 now, then I have fixed my mobility problem somewhat. And Arborec is the last player in the turn order, and we roll for construction. That is played, but nobody follows. We are now in turn 4. Hakan passes, and now it's Sardak Nor, and he activates his forward dock again, and this time he moves in with 2 dreadnoughts from his home system, and I think it's 2 fighters as well. So he's really building up a fleet here. I wonder what he wants to do with that. Maybe we will see that a little later. And he also produces some fighters on his space dock. And now Argent is activating Sardak Nor. This is getting exciting. He moves in with the Warzone and a destroyer, and I guess some infantry as well. And that is because there's a public objective about controlling 4 planets with the same trait, and we have 2 cultural planets here, and that will bring Argent up to 4 cultural planets. And he also takes 2 destroyers from his forward dock and sends them through the rift, so he needs to roll a die for each, and luckily for Argent, both of them survives and also enters the space combat here. So first, if Argent remembers, we can roll for some anti-fighter barrage. That doesn't make any sense because there are no units with sustained damage. Produced 5 hits on the anti-fighter barrage, but I don't see any fighters, and he doesn't have sustain, and there are no infantry in the space area, so I think that's a pretty useless roll this time. So let's just move on to space combat. But Sardak doesn't want to participate in space combat. He plays a action card as Skilled Retreat, and he moves his carrier out of the system and into the system adjacent to Argent. So now we get to the invasion step. So first Argent bombards and produces 3 hits on Vega Minor, and then he puts down 1 infantry there, and the other 4 is participating in ground combat on Vega Major. So it's 4 against 1. That should be a win for Argent. 0 hits and just 1 hit, but that is enough to win the ground combat. So if Argent can keep control of those 2 planets, then he has all 4 and can score a point. Now it's Arborec's turn, and he moves his cruiser into the Gravity Rift to explore the Frontier token and gets an unknown relic fragment. And that was pretty useless. In round 5, Hakan has already passed, so it's Sardak Nor's turn, and he plays an insubordination action card on Argent so that he has to remove a token from his tactical pool. That always hurts, but of course losing those 2 planets also hurts Sardak Nor, so I guess that's completely fair. But that means that Argent is completely out of tokens and actions, so he will probably have to pass for the game round. And so does Arborec, and so does Sardak Nor. We are now entering the status phase. Hakan gets to score first, and he goes for the spend 3 command tokens, and he doesn't have any secrets. Now it's Sardak Nor's turn. He doesn't have any public objectives he can go for, but he actually thought that he had ships in 3 systems adjacent to an anomaly, but unfortunately he didn't. Then Argent scored the control 4 planets with the same trait, and he had 2 extra cultural planets he took from Sarlacc Nor. And lastly, Arborec scores the control more planets than each of 2 neighbors, bringing him into the lead and revealing the second stage 2 objective, and that is to control 2 planets either in or adjacent to 2 different players' home systems. That is a really nasty one and can be really hard to score. It's time for the agenda phase, and we are flipping the first one. Armed Forces Standardization. Elect player. The elected player plays command tokens from their reinforcements so that they have 3 tokens in their tactic pool, 3 tokens in their fleet pool, and 2 tokens in their strategy pool. And if Sarlacc Nor is elected, then he would lose 2 ships, Argent would lose a single ship, and Hakan would also lose a single ship, and Arborec wouldn't lose any. Arborec is not allowed to participate here in this agenda phase, so Argent does, and he is negotiating with Hakan about electing Sarlacc Nor. But first, we don't play any Wind Riders, and there won't be played any After Riders either. So the agreement is that Argent puts 9 votes on Sarlacc Nor, and then Hakan will put 5 votes on Sarlacc Nor, bringing it up to a total of 14 votes, which is more than Sarlacc Nor has, and then he is the elected player. But of course he's not interested in that because he's just built up a rather large fleet. That is also why he is the target in this agenda phase. So Argent plays 5 votes of his own, and he gets 4 extra for the number of players participating in the game. Not 6 as it says. And then Hakan votes 5 as well. But Sarlacc Nor doesn't want to be elected, so he plays a distinguished counselor, and then Argent is the elected. So Argent is the elected player instead, and then he gets, actually it's pretty good for Argent because he gets a few extra tokens and he only loses 1 destroyer. The second agenda, Anti-Intellectual Revolution. It's for or against. 4. After a player researches a technology, they must destroy 1 of their non-fighter ships. So that's fairly cheap for Argent, because he can always just destroy a destroyer. And if you vote against, then you have to exhaust 1 planet for each technology that you own. And since most of the players have 5 or 6 technologies each, then it would be basically the same for everyone. But Argent is voting all of his votes for, and then the other players cannot really do anything about it. Alright, that was the end of round 5. We now have Arborec in the lead with 7 points. We have Argent and Sarlacc Nor on 6 points, and Hakan on 5 points. And now we're entering the very last game round in this game. So let's see who wins.